This is The Roxanne Show. Get ready. It's time to rise. So Holly, thank you so much. I've been so looking forward to having this time here with you. You are just an incredible just plethora of really valuable information, science-based, evidence-based, research, everything, biology, physiology. But I was just saying to you that one of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk to you, yes, to all of that, but it's really your mindset. To me, you are such a powerful, authentic representation of an empowered woman. And you have this, your delivery really gets to me because there's always strength exuded from you. And you definitely know your shit. You're literally one of the leaders, truly. And that's not just my perspective. Like anybody who's paying attention to anything, quality, evidence-based with science and, biology, physiology, all this stuff will agree that you are a leader in this zone. What I love so much is that you show up, you have all of this information, experience, education, but your delivery is so beautiful. You kind of, to me, and I hope you take this as a compliment because to me it is, you have this like Olivia Newton-John just radiance to you. I love it so much because my perspective is like a strong woman is, anything that she wants to be truly. Authenticity to me is number one, and that is so palpable with you. But it's this beautiful grace that's always coming off of you. So I want to talk so deeply about the inner workings of Holly Baxter, and then we'll move outward into, other aspects of all the things that you talk about. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That was a really lovely introduction. It's so funny. You said, you see me as this kind of strong, powerful woman, which I think, yes, I would agree. But I think that there's such a stigma about that. It's almost like, you expect of a woman like that, well, then there must not be this softer, kind, empathetic, giving, compassionate woman underneath, But I think they can coexist. And for the longest time, even I don't think I believed that those things could consist together or exist together, rather.
Yeah.
It was like these things were mutually exclusive. And I think, speaking to that idea of authenticity, I was denying so much of myself. When I first got into, this space, the, evidence-based, dietetics, nutrition, exercise science.
Yeah.
So it's been a wonderful journey for me, I think, kind of coming through everything, overcoming a lot of things, and then realizing that they don't have to exist in isolation of each other. They can exist together. And now I finally, just in the last couple of years, have started to kind of find my feet. And I've stopped trying to be, like somebody else. I've stopped trying to, compare myself to anybody else, because I truly do think that for all of us, we all show up a little different. And it's so important to embrace those, individual things about you. And, I think that's why I now feel like I'm my most happy, content self, because I'm finally doing the things that I want to do, and it feels right for me, not for somebody else.
I love that. Well, yeah, I think it really speaks to why I really receive you as a very magnetic woman. I think that when you are truly integrated and operating from your authentic self, this is where your magnetism is so powerful. I want to ask you, you said you were denying yourself. Was that, what did that look like for you? What did that feel like? How was that showing up for you?
So I think for the longest time, and all throughout my, childhood into early adolescence, even in my mid to late 20s, I had this idea that, if I was going to be taken seriously, or if I was going to be, successful in my career, then I couldn't show any weakness. If you are, strong and, you're going to be successful, then, you need to kind of, it was almost like they told myself that I had to be strong and, unbreakable all the time.
Mhm.
And that's just so untrue. I think, when I denied myself of, those true emotions, and when I didn't allow myself to, embrace, the girly part of me still, because as somebody that's come through with a very academic, science background,
Mhm.
to be taken seriously, I think I had this belief or mindset that, that's the only way that you can be. You have to always portray yourself this way if you want to be taken seriously and if you want to have a good career,
Yeah.
particularly because, it's such a male dominant industry, at least in
Mhm.
the science space.
Sure.
So, as a female coming through, I kind of felt like I had to have this persona, and I was denying, a big part of myself. And I think some of that was inherently through the way that I was raised. I
Mhm.
was told, you need to, don't use your looks or your appearances to gain favor, and you should, don't. You shouldn't be, all about your physical appearance. You have to just, pretend like that part doesn't exist. It was like almost body avoidance, like
Yeah.
persona avoidance, because otherwise you're vain, or you're too feminine, and then that's not strong or powerful. So yeah, I think those were some of the things that I really denied myself of being. And I think once I believed that you can still be educated, you can be intelligent, you can still be funny, you can still have a
Yes.
personality. God help it if we all take a joke every now and then.
Yes.
And you can still be feminine, like, cool, I occasionally like to do my makeup. And for so long I never would want to put selfies or pictures up. I'm like, what, that's just kind of part of being a girl. We like different stuff. So
Yes.
I don't have to keep trying to be a dude on social media. If I want to put something pretty up, I'm going to put it up. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm like, it
I
doesn't mean that
love
you
it.
can't be these things. And I think women, especially, we just have extra talent. I honestly, I'm sorry to the dudes that are listening to this if they are. But I got to say, I think women can be just as smart. And I think we also have these other creative gems built into us that men maybe don't possess. So we're kind of cool.
I fully agree with you. We are really cool. And I think that there's so much more power when, everybody has masculine and feminine energies within us, right? And it's a big part of the conversation with me. I believe that we are most powerful when these two energies are operating in harmony. And so
Mhm.
it feels like part of your journey in this particular area of conversation right now is that you were almost operating in like a hyper masculine state, which by the way is so common for a lot of women, especially driven women. I mean, I know I had that, in certain aspects of my life as well. However, that in society, like straight up, I mean, even if you look at the way scheduling is and just the way that we're the hustle culture, it's like do. And so my framework around it is the heart is the being, it's the feminine, the mind is the doing, and it's the masculine. And we
Mhm.
cannot always be in the doing because then we depart from the being. So it feels like to
Mhm.
me that you got to a place, and I actually want to tease that out a little bit more, but you got to a place within yourself where you're like, no, I'm going to integrate more of the being that I actually am. And I can still do my powerful doing. And in fact, probably even show up more powerful in that way because now you're whole.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been really really beneficial, I think, for me to kind of step back and get in tune with myself, because like I said, I think, and for a lot of us, we tend to deny ourselves the opportunity to reflect and really get present and listen to who you are in your heart. And that was the biggest change for me, I think. I had the desire to find my happiness, because
Yeah.
for the longest time, I felt like I was just chasing this endless, unfulfilling, career path. And I really had to get in tune with myself to kind of find out, well, what's missing from this? Why don't I feel fulfilled? Why am I unhappy?
Mhm.
And there were a lot of other, competing circumstances, I think, that we can probably talk about a little bit today,
Yeah, please.
with regards to my eating disorder and
Yes.
some trauma from my, teen years and
Yes.
adolescence. So, those things were making it even more challenging because I had this, ideal image in my head of how I was supposed to show up, of how I was also supposed to look,
Hmm.
from a physical appearance standpoint. And, I had to do a lot of work on me before, things actually kind of clicked and started working, and that started
Yeah.
with you need to get through this eating disorder.
Yeah.
And that really meant let's go back. You got to go way back to see where this started from, because the eating disorder, come to find, is really a symptom
Hmm.
of my trauma.
Hmm.
And the eating disorder was a way for me to control the chaos that was going on, in my environment. It was a way of me controlling or staying, I guess, in my physical body. I don't want to say that I was present. I was very much detached and dissociated from my conscious self for
Sure.
a number of years.
Hmm.
So it was really a nice way for me to kind of get back into, who is Holly at her core and who does she want to be?
Yeah.
And that meant I had to tackle a lot of big demons to kind of come out the other side and feel like, things are really, really good now.
I love that. And I know a lot of women in my community have addressed, having eating disorders, and essentially like, it's almost like you get through it, but you're never fully recovered. It's almost like something that you have to constantly kind of
Mm,
monitor or be aware of. And I know with you, I mean, you had it pretty severely. There was like bulimia, anorexia.
mhm,
What was that point for you what was like the bottom line point where where you decided like, okay, no more. I gotta
mhm.
turn this around.
Yeah, honestly, I remember very clearly. I have started writing a book about this, but there was a particular moment. I think I was going through some challenges in my marriage.
Mhm.
I had actually, started living separately just for a little while to get myself back on track. I knew that if I was going to, make things work in a relationship sense, I needed to do the work on me as well. And it was difficult to do that with so many things kind of going on in our lives, like in a business sense and in our
Yes.
family. So I had just done, it was probably 3 years of back-to-back competitions.
Mm.
And I was one morning, I guess I had, been and done a workout. I'd come home and I just found myself gorging myself on, something absolutely silly in my pantry. It wasn't like a, big dessert or, a whole bag of, I don't know, candy or
Something
anything.
great.
It
Yeah.
was, I just had like, I don't know, 6 bowls of cereal, just like a silly amount of cereal. Everybody knows about the cereal like addiction.
Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, I mean, I can laugh at all of this now, but my gosh, I
Yeah.
remember, shortly after that, and I felt, just physically so uncomfortable. And, it just made me really upset because I was like, I've just gone to work so hard. I did have a really good training session.
Mhm.
What is wrong with me is kind of what I found myself saying. It's like, when is this eating disorder going to leave me?
Yeah.
And, I proceeded to purge. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor and I just had tears just rolling down my eyes and my face. And I remember just thinking, like, will I ever be free of this? Like,
Mm.
will I ever not have this disorder? And I just remember then, like that day, I was like, that's it. I am never going to let myself purge again. So you have to wear the consequences of your, eating decisions.
Yeah.
And when I started, when that became an off limits, there's no compensation in this method anymore. And
Mm.
I never did. I never did it once after that
Wow.
time.
Wow.
So I went through a period where I did gain a lot of weight,
Mhm.
but I would not let myself purge as a means of compensating. So that was like step number one.
Yeah.
I set a really hard boundary with myself.
Mm.
And then I think that forced me to get real with my feelings. It was, well, what's driving me to eat right now? Is this an environmental cue? Is it a biological cue? Is it a social cue? Is it, an emotional cue? So I had to really think about those four things. Like, why? Sometimes it was physiological hunger
Sure.
because, I was dieting and
Yeah.
competing. And yeah,
An
kind of that's
athlete.
something that happens pretty chronically
Yeah,
when you're when
totally.
you're a competitor. But then other times, it would be very much emotional. It was something, triggered a sad emotion, or I was unhappy, or I felt unheard, or I felt disrespected. And it was kind of chronic.
Yes.
It was always an emotional thing. And then I started having to look at my lifestyle,
Mhm.
what's going on in my circle of friends, my relationships. my career, like who are the people that are influencing these emotions? And that was when a lot of things had to change.
Yes.
So yeah, I started working through the emotional eating and was able to identify what triggers were contributing to that.
Hmm.
And yeah, for a long time, I oscillated in weight. I think I went up by like 20 pounds in one period. But, I think every time I spoke to my therapist, and I did work with a professional for like, I'm still working with her. I've been with her
Hmm.
4 years now.
Amazing.
But it was like weekly, and
Yeah.
that's what it took. And then it wasn't just that one session. It was, I have every single book I could get my hands on, every single Audible, every single podcast that I could, listen to in my free time about, how do I change my life? How do I become, this positive, happy person?
Yeah.
How do I free myself of this feeling that I have to be perfect all the time? How do I have to free myself of the feeling of, inferiority? How do I stop comparing? So
Yes.
it was so intentional. And, with that frequent, consistent effort, that's kind of when things started to turn. And
Love
it
it.
took a long time. And
Yeah.
I think we all still keep learning. It's like
Sure.
you just get better at regulating your emotions. So it's not
Mm.
like I don't see, a beautiful woman and I'm just like, oh my God, she's amazing. And then like it's not like I don't have a bad thought, like, oh, I'm so crappy. I still have those thoughts. Like, I might feel inferior. I'm like, God dang, she's beautiful. But I don't let it like affect me the way that it
Yeah.
used to.
Yeah.
It's just, I still go to the gym. I'm still, in my off season, and I'm not the fittest person in the gym. And I'm just like, yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I know I can do that. I'm choosing not to because I value these other things in my life just as much as my physical appearance or my health. So,
Yes.
I think we all get better at, adapting and modifying our perception of different things. And
Yes.
that change, by gosh, it's hard, but it's so worth it.
Oh, it's so worth it. I thank you for sharing all that. And two things that I'm going to kind of point out there that are also two big conversations that I'm always having. And I'd love for you to just even elaborate on more. But, I heard a strong sense of self-awareness kicked in. And I think that without self-awareness is the greatest agent for change. Clearly, you
Hmm.
just, validated that. The other
Hmm.
piece was self-love. And
Hmm.
self-love for me personally is, it's this kind of how I frame it is like this cup and it holds your self-honesty, self-compassion, self-respect, self-worth, so self-love is like, I call her the queen
Hmm.
of battle, right? Because she is gonna position you to do some really hard shit, but it's things
Hmm.
that you need to do to continuously ascend into the highest expression of yourself. And I feel like when you were on that floor, and you're crying, it's like that self-love kicked in, like, hey, this is it. And then
Hmm.
carried you through your journey to heal.
Hmm.
So can you talk about just the importance of self-love from your perspective and what that even looks like for you and really
Yeah.
like how it shows up for you even in your life every day now?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think one of the things that, stood out to me at the time, and I don't know where the thought came from, but um, I think someone had been talking to me about, this healing journey. And I just started attending church actually. So I grew up, I guess, agnostic. So
Mhm,
that's basically for anyone that doesn't know about that, it's somebody that's not really against religion, but also not for.
mhm.
And that was largely just because of the environment that I lived in. I didn't
Yeah.
have any church going friends. There weren't really a lot of Christianity,
Mhm,
in my community. So I didn't have any mentors like that, kind of helping me guide, or be led towards like, what is right, what is the truth,
mhm.
how to conduct yourself as a good, kind, humble being. So I just kind of gotten into church, and I think one of the messages one day was kind of around the idea that no one's coming for you, no
Mm,
one's going to help you. You are it. So you've got to do something for yourself. No one's going to save you. You have to make those changes. And I think that was kind of the thing that boosted me to keep going. Um, and from there, so many of the materials that I was reading about and learning was you've got to be able to change your mindset. And if we think about, the neuropsychology of the brain and the neuroplasticity of our brains, and I actually met a phenomenal individual at a summit probably a couple of years ago now. Her name's Dr. Caroline Leaf. She has a fantastic book, and she does studies in the area that she lives on neuropsychology.
Okay.
And it was all about, rewiring your brain. She talks a lot about, people that suffer with depression or other mental health conditions, and, using her approach, over 60 days, people actually completely resolve all of their symptoms. If they go and use a subjective scoring system for depression or for anxiety or for other mood disorders, they're completely healthy again. They're no longer, a clinically depressed individual. And I thought, wow, if all these people in these studies can do this with that consistent daily effort, then why can't I? So everything led to, changing your mind, Holly. What are the beliefs? What are the narratives that you're telling yourself that are not serving you in a positive way? And how can you start to change that? And it all started with some silly mantras and some affirmations, which at the time, I can't tell you what an idiot I felt, putting these things on my mirror and I'm writing them down. And I had this list of like 100, and I still use these with my own clients today.
Love it.
And I say, I want you to go through and choose 5 off this list of, 100. Which ones stand out to you? Which ones resonate? And then I want you to tell me why. And I was doing that drill with myself. So, it might be something about, I love the strength of my body. I love my intelligence. I love my sense of humor, or just other things like that. Something that's really positive. And I love my body exactly the way it is. So to begin with, you really feel like a fraud. You don't necessarily believe it.
Yeah.
When you stand in the mirror and you see a body reflecting back at you that you perhaps don't like.
Yeah.
But you tell yourself, I love this body. I'm happy exactly as I am. And I didn't believe it for a long time, but I think the more I did that, and the more I started associating with, individuals and pages and groups, communities that were very much either body positivity or at least body neutral.
Yeah.
So there's, I guess, the space of body neutrality. It all started to kind of sink in, when I started seeing these other women being compassionate for themselves and, giving themselves some slack. And here's me over here, the perfectionist, OCD, everything's got to be perfect all the time. And I had that standard of myself in every way you possibly could. Like I had to be doing it all the best. And then I felt terrible if I couldn't. And when you hear somebody else that you respect kind of saying, you know what, I had to cut myself some slack, or I had to give myself a break.
Yes.
And I realized I can't do it all. I'm starting to think to myself as I'm hearing these people say it, I'm like, well, maybe I should adopt a little bit more of a softer approach for me too. Because, would I treat somebody else the way that I treat myself? And, we use that in our practice. You say, well, would you say that to your friend? And usually your client responds, well, no. And I'm like, okay, so why do you think that you should speak that way to yourself?
Yes.
So it's such a, that inner dialogue is so critical to, how you show up in the day.
Yes.
And honestly, every day I try to listen to something, read something. I mean, I have this cute little calendar right now on my desk, and every day it gives me a little quote. And today it is, there comes a time when you have to choose between turning the page and closing a book. So you can just take little things every day that can move you in that positive direction.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you're just radiating.
I love it. So I've been a writer my whole life, and I often speak about my kind of poetic way of saying it is that words cast spells. And because words are actually an energetic frequency. So the inaudible and the audible are actually giving an experience. So it makes perfect sense. It's actually very logical to me, throwing something kind of spiritual into logical, but no, it's really, it's like a vibrational experience. There was a study that was done on water. Are you familiar with that one, with the water droplets? And, God, I forget the scientist's name, Japanese scientist, but they basically were speaking differently to the water. And some of the water was being spoken to really aggressively and, disempowering and mean. And, others with love and, high vibrational. And under the microscope, you can see the difference of how the water, like some would come out, the crystals like super beautiful, and others just, yeah, it was really interesting. So,
Oh, that's so interesting.
it's so, I know I'm putting it in, I'm writing my first book right now, and it's going into the book because I speak about the power of words, but I love that I love what you shared, because I personally feel the value in that. And I also think that everything is really just information, right? We can talk, sun is information, food's information, what you're reading is information. And it's informing a lot about, us, a lot about like ourselves, and so I feel that, what you shared there as well was like, there was a big kind of self-identity shift that took place, which essentially is like the relationship that you had with yourself. And so you moved out of this perfectionist, mentality. And even, it sounds like you moved from a place where you were rejecting yourself in a lot of ways, and then, pivoting that into more compassion, which I actually call a fucking high performance tool, because it allows you to be a fucking human. But I like to integrate the high performance in that, because a lot of people can hear compassion and like, oh, it's like I'm in a baby. It's like, well, no. It doesn't mean that. It just means like I can accept me in this moment so that I can move on from this moment, maybe learn from it or something. So it sounds like you really, really like, you metabolized all of this very powerfully. And that's the thing, Holly. That's why, again, for anybody, because we have limited time here right now, but I'm so like, I manifested. I'm like, we have so many more conversations to have. But, you're from your IG content to your YouTube. And anytime you're really speaking, you are such an incredible source of information, reliable information on all things, related to exercise, science, biology, body composition, all this. I feel that this other piece that we're talking about even makes you more just powerful. And it leads me to this area that I really want to talk to you about, which is when you started your business, Holly Baxter LLC, which is really focused on women and coaching, right? To me, I feel like, ooh, this is just my language, but she stepped into like her sacred purpose. Cause I feel like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I am so happy that I have this all-female team. I think so. If I go back to like my very first job, there has not been a point in my career where I've not been, I guess, an employee or working for somebody that is a male. And now that's okay. I have no issues with dudes. In fact, I probably get on with men better at the moment than I do with women in some cases because of that, powerful, I'm happy to have hard conversations and I am very direct, but I also have this other nice, like soft marshmallow side too. But I just, as somebody that has been in this position where I know my strengths, I know my talents, I know what I'm good at, but then not really being able to fully explore those because of the male dominant industries that I worked in, I just feel like there was so much on the table that I wasn't able to give in many different positions in my career. And then just having a different focus for females, where the previous companies that I've worked for, it has not been the focus. It was very, very masculine, very, hard-headed, do or die, no days off. And sure, I can jump on that bandwagon every now and then, but it really was missing a core element of me, which was this feminine, empowered, a creative being. So I now have this team of women whom I absolutely love. I feel like I've finally been able to connect with like-minded individuals who share a united goal. Our purpose for all of us is to be able to educate and inspire and to, you know, bring together females and allow them to flourish and to live their best self. And often that means we've got to do the work on their physical body, you know, through their movement, obviously through our exercise, you know, science program. We have our chiropractors and physical therapists and all the good stuff. And then there's the nutrition element. So we have our dietitians. That's obviously my background is dietetics. So there's this food component. And then there's this other piece that I think had been missing for such a long time. And that is the psychology, the mindset, your spiritual being. And I have really struggled to find at least one individual that kind of encompasses all of that. Now, I've got my favorite psychologists that I follow. I think Dr. Nicole LaPera is one of my favorites.
Yes.
You know, and there's a host of them. You know, we've got the Kite sisters, Lindsay and Lexi Kite. They'll be speaking at a seminar that we're holding in a couple of months' time. So I've got these people that I aspire to, but there's no one that really does it all together. And I've just been sitting here looking at, you know, here are my experiences. And I know there's plenty of women that have had and suffered with similar things to me in their lifetime. And I know what it's taken for me to get from this horrible, uncomfortable, unhappy place to get to where I am now. And I know what it took. And it needs all of those things together. So yeah, this all-female team encompasses all of that. We really are trying to bridge the gap between, you know, exercise and nutrition science, and then the amazing science that's being done over here, you know, on the psychology front. Because I, as the expert in nutrition and exercise, can tell you exactly what you need to do to achieve your body composition goals, right? And I'll tell you how to do it in the most effective way, but also a safe and efficacious way. So I sleep at night. You know, I want women to have a healthy, robust metabolism. But I also want them to thrive in the rest of their lives too. And, you know, often it's the behaviors, the habits that we have that are impeding our ability to execute what I'm telling you. So much of what we do now, I think, is trying to help bridge the gap between those two things. And it's usually habit change. And it's so hard. And I can't tell you the number of times I've said to the same client, can you send me your new calendar with your schedule for when you're going to be doing your training sessions? Can you, you know, show me where you've put some time down to do this new habit? And they just don't do it. And I'll just keep harping. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, they're like, oh, I did it. Oh my God, why didn't I think of this before? How easy, you know? And it's just that, you know, you got a squeaky wheel, and we're trying to apply, you know, 3 different areas of expertise to one. And it's a beautiful thing when I think, you know, that all comes together. And we haven't even touched on the spiritual side, but I think, you know, there's that element as well, which I think really solidified like my purpose on this planet.
I've been journaling my entire life, and it's helped me to develop the most empowered, loving, and trusted relationship with myself. Journaling is a powerful tool that helps you to gain more self-love and self-confidence. It can help you get unstuck when you need clarity the most, and it helps you to powerfully move through any and all of your life challenges. It's a pathway to manifesting your biggest desires in life while creating an unbreakable relationship with your authentic self. I created You Are the Path, a guided and illustrated journal to help you gain all of this in your own life. In this 7x10 mystical journal, you get a personal introduction and final thoughts message from me, 7 guided and illustrated sections with lined pages and 5 thought-provoking journal prompts, 7 empowering quotes from me. You get 1 freestyle creative section full of blank pages for drawing and sketching, and you get the beautiful artwork designed by talented artist Emerald Patchett. There are 120 pages of pure possibilities waiting for you in this journal. You Are the Path was born to help you create, discover, and illuminate the path that is you. That's why I framed it as your sacred purpose, because I mean, there's a lot of spirituality over here always. And the reason I can speak to it as well. I just love your holistic approach, because I really think that that's the way in my own journey. Just to bullet point, you know, I'm 44, I'll be 45 in 2 weeks, really excited about that. You know, I I'm a mesomorph. I have 3 brothers. I'm the older sister. I was a track competitor, growing up until I started surfing, and then I didn't care about anything else. It changed everything. But when I was 16 or 17 in Taekwondo, I blew out my knee, and it resulted in 3 back-to-back knee surgeries that were pretty gnarly. And at the time, I was eating the American diet. I had like an 8-pack. I didn't have to think about anything because it was just kind of my, so I didn't have any knowledge or science or anything. But fast forward, I would end up putting on weight, and I would have this is like on top of the muscle. And so I was like, whoa, like who the fuck am I? And it would be the catalyst to help me discover one of the greatest passions, which is like, I'm a total science geek, neuroscience, biology, and all of this. But there was so much pain to try and figure out how to get back into, my optimal body composition. Now, my brothers, who were competitors, and just athletes, were like, lift weights, eat more protein. And I was like,
it's pretty good advice. I mean,
I say it now, and it's like I have no problem, but I had so much fucking resistance because also it's important to say this, like, again, my age, I grew up and I worked my prior career. I was a celebrity makeup artist in fashion and entertainment, like having shoulders. Nah, I stood out. You know what I mean? And like, so it's like strong wasn't beautiful then. And I felt like, no, I don't want to get bulky. So the reason why I'm even sharing this and how it really relates to everything that or a big piece of what you were talking about is I had to really switch the mindset piece before everything. And I tried everything, like everything, shit you're not supposed to be doing, you know what I mean? But, it was part of the journey, and that's why I can speak to things very authentically now. But when I shifted the mindset and I was like, okay, fuck this, I'm going to listen, and because I had learned a lot already, but that was like the big piece. So I stopped doing the excessive cardio, and I started picking up weights and eating more protein. I actually did my first comprehensive blood labs. This is years ago already, but this is before. My doctor is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, also one of my best friends. So I found out that I was anemic, but didn't know. And so I started eating meat. I wasn't eating meat for 15 years, just sharing all this because yes, lifting weights and all this stuff on the external was important and actually did make a massive difference in everything, body composition. But it was the behavior. It was first the belief that then affected the behavior that then shaped the habits differently. So I think what you and your team are doing is essential. It is the piece to really help women thrive from an internal and external perspective in their life.
Yeah, I think, embracing what is different about you is something that I really live so strongly by. And it doesn't mean that, I said this before, I'll be scrolling on Instagram, which is actually a lot less these days, but, something will come up and, I just have to catch myself. And again, it's that self-awareness that, kind of getting present with you to hear what you are saying and what that dialogue is doing to you. So, now I can kind of catch myself and be like, that's cool. Like, let them be that. They're probably not doing what I do over here, reading some science papers and, doing probably something that's very boring to them. So, I think it's so important to embrace like your uniqueness, and accept those differences rather than criticize and judge, and get curious because I always say like, rather than coming to, a discussion when you've had this kind of critical voice, like, be curious about that. Ask yourself questions. Why do I think this about me? Or why do I, have such a strong holding for, this thing over here? And you kind of have to kind of keep breaking that down and peeling back that onion until you find like, what's the why behind this? And sometimes there isn't even anything good. And I've had to realign and reassess all of my values because I realized that there's so much more to life than your physical appearance. Yes, it's some of the things that we do that will have a byproduct of, an improved or an enhanced physical appearance. I think they can be done for your health. So I really try to focus now more on, the exercise that I do as how is this going to help me feel? And previously it used to be, I need to do XYZ training sessions and I need to get this many steps in and I've got to eat exactly this way, because I was focusing on its impact on my body composition.
Yeah.
And, when I started to flip it around a little bit, and, there'd be sometimes when I would go to force myself to do, my 5th training session for the week, or, it's 9:30 at night and I would go and do my,
Oh my gosh.
extra 3,000 steps at night that I thought I had to do, which, in some cases it was, I was competing.
Sure.
But when I step away from that and I take my breaks, I was like, why am I still making myself do these things?
Yeah.
That's actually not healthy. That's not healthy, because it's going to make me stay up later. I'm not going to get a good night's sleep. That's going to impact my work. It's going to make me more stressed. So, I started thinking about, well, what amount of exercise do I need to do that's good for me?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't exercise,
No.
or you shouldn't just stop doing all of your steps altogether. But, it's important to find that balance for, what is healthy and that allows you to, live your life.
Yeah.
I value my friendships and I value deep connections. I don't like any of this superficial stuff. Like I might have 3 friends and, you can tell them everything. You are exactly who you are at all the times. You don't have to lie. You can be you. So I value friendships and I also value my social life. So to be a competitor and train like that and, the restrictive diet, I understand it for the purposes of the sport. But when I'm not doing that, you bet your ass I'm going to be going out and eating and enjoying all the things. And it's not good to eat a lot of saturated fats or eat in a large energy surplus all the time, because that can have negative health effects, and you're not going to feel good if you're lugging around excess body fat to a certain point.
Right.
So, it's about finding moderation and balance for the individual so that you can still live a healthy, happy, life.
Yeah.
And hopefully one, with great longevity.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the word that comes to my mind is like, it's really vitality. Like if that's your anchoring kind of measuring point, like what's going to keep me in my highest state of vitality. And when you think of it like that, that is a holistic perspective, right? Your social life and those connections and all of that is just as important as your sleep and your nutrition and all of that. So I love that. This is just also why I think you're in such a powerful position. And I really do believe that you're a woman really walking her purpose, because, you can speak to our everyday non-competitive woman who wants to flourish in life, but you're also someone who can speak to the competitive woman, and that, and that's important too. And keep the mindset component really healthy, with competitive women, because I know, especially in bodybuilding, like you're being judged for how you look. It's gnarly. I know, my brothers, they're such high level athletes, and it's like, the older sister who loves them, like sometimes when I see them on stage and the judging, and I'm like,
yeah, it's funny, a lot of people have actually said to me, so, now that you've overcome your eating disorder and you seem to be kind of thriving and you are very much, healthy weight at all sizes, which is very possible, by the way. You can look at, an individual that might be carrying excess body fat, but if you look at their biomarkers, their blood work, they can still be very healthy. So, I really am a believer of that, and that there is, a right balance for everybody.
Yeah.
But, if I was to stay in this industry, I have been given a little bit of criticism on this, but I want to stay in this industry because I want, number one, to be an advocate for, the voice that isn't necessarily out there at the moment, which is you deserve to be happy. You deserve to, love and value and respect yourself and, have all of the things. But you don't have to be attached to the outcome. So I can still do a competition, but it's no longer my eating disorder driving those decisions anymore. It is, I can do this because it's difficult. I like a challenge. I like to work hard as much as the next person to achieve a result, but I'm not attached to that outcome. I can be Holly, the stage lean competitor, but I also know that's really hard on my life in all these other areas. And it doesn't come without sacrifice. So, I'm still happy to step away from that and still be Holly and still be happy. So
Yes.
that's kind of why I want to stay in that space to show people that you can do that sport, but just know that it's maybe there are some negative health consequences, which I talk about all the time on social media,
Hmm.
from a physiological and psychological standpoint.
Yeah.
But it can be rewarding for different reasons. So it's probably not for everybody. And I
Mhm.
think that's why it's so important to kind of know yourself, like what is important to you.
Yeah.
Because, and sometimes the reality is you've got to have a conversation where you've got to adjust your expectations.
Yes.
There is some women out there that have 3 kids. Maybe they're a single mom and they're working full time and they've got a side hustle as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then their expectations are, well, I'm going to sign up to you because I know that you've got all this information and all this knowledge, and I'm going to be able to be you. And my first response to them is, well, how are we going to do that? You're a single mom and you've got 2 jobs. Let's just moderate a little bit here and find like a realistic goal, because I struggle to do that goal and I don't have 3 children
Yeah.
and I'm not so trying to find the time, it's not real. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of what I do is helping to manage people's expectations, because I can give you the knowledge. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to execute it based
Right.
on what you choose to do with your life.
Right. No, that's so true. It's that reality piece that,
Mm,
and I think then it also gives, the individual permission to, also take like, I say like inches make the mile, just make the small changes that compound. And then, the
mhm,
micro makes the macro kind of thing.
mhm.
Yeah. It's so important.
Yeah, and I think once people have a realistic expectation, it kind of allows them to be less critical.
Yeah.
Because you'll hear a lot of women so often say, "I'm just so disappointed in myself. Why can't I stick to this? Why can't I do it? Da 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 da. I've been working at it for 5 years." And when you say to them, "Hey, well, here's the facts. Like, let's look at all the science. This is how much you can grow in a 12-week study intervention.
Hmm.
Here's what we need for you to achieve the best possible outcomes from your dietary intakes." It's going to take you 6 years to do that. So then it's
Yes.
almost like, there's this sigh of relief. And
Yeah.
then they finally, have that level of compassion and kindness that they probably could have been giving themselves the whole time.
Yeah.
And that allows them to stay consistent because they know what they're doing is eventually going to get them where they need, but they're now in this better place with their reasoning.
Yeah. They stop fighting themselves. Yeah.
Hmm.
I love that. I love it. Well, okay, so like I mentioned, I'm like I want to talk to you so much more. I adore you and I think you're a true badass, and there's so much about, just lifting and nutrition and all of that I'd love to have another conversation with you about, but this conversation truly was first for us to meet and really to give you the space to speak to everything that we've spoken about, which I believe is just going to get louder and louder with you in your career. And I think there's such an important place for that in the world. So I'm really, just grateful that I've been able to facilitate, this conversation with you. I want to ask you, just as we get ready to close out. I mean, so are you still writing a book
I
related
am, yeah. I
to,
have
oh,
two
okay.
on the go. The first one is actually going to be, I guess the title is the Complete Exercise Guide to Muscle Hypertrophy.
Oh,
And then
amazing.
there is a bio, which will have elements of my history,
Mhm.
trauma, and I guess just my healing journey to overcome a 15-year-long eating disorder. So, yeah.
Amazing. That's amazing. I just like fun to insert. I swear when I looking at your Instagram, or even when I was listening to Peter's conversation with you, a podcast, which by the way, everybody needs to listen to, conversation with her and Peter Tita. It's so good. But I swear I was listening to Peter last night and I'm like, your conversation with him. And I'm like, God, I want to go lift right now. Like you fire me up. It's so fun. That's just like a honest insert here. And also just an invitation for anybody who's not already following you and wants to learn from you, which I highly suggest, because this is also important. Women come to me to learn. They ask me questions all the time, everything related to training, to nutrition, to
Mhm.
recovery. So I just want to make it clear. I learn from women like you, from individuals like you who know their shit, who I trust, because there's so much out there that you just can't
Mm,
trust. And a lot of women communicate that to me. They're like, I don't even know where to start because
yeah.
it's like this diet, that diet, cardio, no cardio, like,
Mhm.
yeah. And so I rely on you. for the
I
goods.
think it's I think it's really hard as people start to kind of diversify, what they do. That's when it gets really tough. And I will say, as somebody that really desires to stay in the world of academics, when you have a job and you're a public facing person, and there's this constant demand to be on social media, that really does detract from the amount of time that you can spend reading and learning and staying on top of the science. So
Right.
I think, people are looking to follow somebody. One of the key things would be, number one, look at their education.
Yeah.
Obviously, that means they've spent time, at school, specifically studying things, because there will be a lot of people that you come across who look phenomenal
Hmm.
and they've got there through maybe genetics, a bit of hard work, and, everything just stuck.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they necessarily have, a deep understanding of why and what's healthy and appropriate. So
Yeah.
education, I think, is really important. But I know a lot of my, the first people that I ever started following on Instagram and Facebook, they were very much in the science space, but then you can see them kind of branch off. And now, they've got clothing lines and they have, training accessories. And, that's where their focus is. And that's okay. But I think, that's the type of follower that or, the person that you're following,
Hmm.
that you probably aren't going to get the level of detail from. So, I know for me,
Hmm.
I love those accounts, and boy, I would love to have my own clothing line and all those fun things, right? I'm still the girl, but I know I can't do it all. So I have really stuck to, I'm not kind of there posting pretty outfits or my makeup tutorials. I am really just trying to communicate like what the scientific papers are saying in an easy to understand format or delivery method. So you're not going to get, a pretty dolled up me every day. You'll
Oh, I
get
don't know. I
something
think
that
you
has
always look
got a few
gorgeous in your.
PMID references and some graphs, but hopefully you can apply it. I think everything that I try to do is very applicable. So,
Yes.
take this, apply it to what you do, and there's always context.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. No, well, I think you always look gorgeous and badass, but it is so true that you take very complex research and you distill it down to a level where, people who are not well versed in science or the language of science can
Mhm.
comprehend it and then put it into application. And that's everything. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and I think this new book is going to be phenomenal. It'll be probably the first of its kind as far as like an exercise guide to muscle hypertrophy. Like we
wow.
tackle everything. It's looking at, and we use a lot of, I guess, scientific examples
Hmm.
um, to kind of illustrate, here's where maybe social media has gone a little bit too far this way with,
Hmm.
volume and muscle hypertrophy. Here's where, maybe the literature has gone in the wrong direction for strength versus hypertrophy and different kind of training systems. So I really hope that that's a valuable tool to not only just the general public, but to people that are in the industry that just don't have time, because I get it.
Yeah.
So it'll
Yeah.
be a really good resource for coaches, I think, as well.
Amazing. So when that book comes out, can we bring you back on and then we can dive into all of that stuff? And
Oh
that's
my
like a
God,
perfect
yes,
segue for
yes,
that.
yes, yes, yes.
Amazing. Okay. Well, Holly, thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd just love to insert as kind of like a closeout to this really powerful conversation that I'm so grateful to have had with you?
No, it's been wonderful chatting with you. Look, I'm just going to say, especially to all the females, and I'm sure there's guys out there as well, but
Hmm.
there's so much to life. There's so much to be lived, and I think we get so focused and distracted by things that are just not that important. Ultimately, when we go to our graves, what are the things that we're going to think back on? And it's the quality of our relationships, the people in our lives, and the memories and the experiences. And your physical appearance is just such a small blip on the radar.
Hmm.
So think about all the time that we focus on that. And if we didn't, what that would allow us to accomplish and to achieve, and the beautiful connections and experiences that we could have. And that was a big learning lessons for me. I think, my quality of life improved significantly when I finally was like, ah, I just need to let that go. I
Yeah.
just need to let it go. I will continue to educate and do things the healthy, scientific way, but I'm going to let some of that go. And it freed up all this space for so many other wonderful things. And I'm a happier person for it. So,
I love it. Thank you for that. That is really powerful. And again, I'm saying it. You are absolutely magnetic. I'm very grateful because you are such a powerful, empowering, authentic contributor. So thank you so much. And for everybody who wants to stay dialed into you, maybe learn from you, coach with you and your team, where are they going? And we'll put everything in the show notes.
Absolutely. I kept it real easy. My
Perfect.
Instagram is Holly T Baxter. It's the same on YouTube. And I guess everything is linked in the description. So
Perfect.
you can find our website, my nutrition coaching app, all of our training programs, coaching team, all that good stuff. Books.
Amazing. Yes.
It's all there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Holly. To be
Thank you.
continued. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. Please like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review.